In this video, we talk about types of relations. Now, the first one we talk about is one-to-one relation, and it is defined as for any value of x, there is only one corresponding value of y. One-to-one relations is seen in our everyday life. We all have names, and there are no two persons having the same names and age. The second example is that in examinations, we are given our individual papers to sit for the exam. It is one person to one examination paper. The next example that we can cite is mobile phones. Everybody having a mobile phone has a unique number. These are one-to-one relations. We say that a relation can be defined by a mathematical equation. To be explicit in our definition or our directives, we use mathematical relations. Now, if we have an input set, say we have this one as an input, which corresponds to an output set, then if we have elements, say 1, 2, and 3, and they correspond to 1, 4, and 9 in the range, we have this as our output, and this set will be our domain. This relation is one-to-one. If for any value of x, we can map it to only one value in the output set. 2 maps to 4 and 3 maps to 9. For any value of x in the input set, if there is only one corresponding value in the output, then we say that the mapping or the relation is one-to-one. In the Cartesian plane, if we have a curve this way, any value of x that we pick, x1, can only be mapped to one value of y. We say that the relation that relates pair of values, x and y, is a one-to-one relation. Any x value that you pick, you get its corresponding y. So we say that this graph is also a one-to-one relation. If we have input set which correspond to an output set R, S, and T in the domain, and it corresponds to 1, 2, and 3 in the range, such that the relation is R maps to 1, T also maps to 1, and S maps to 2. This is not a one-to-one because R and S maps to the same element in the range. So we say that this is not a one-to-one relation. A second type of relation is what we call the one-to-many relation. One-to-many relation. Now, this in real life, if we look at the way we do applications after our secondary school, one person can apply to many universities. One person applying to many universities is a one-to-many relation. The next example, during the Olympic Games, we have athletes who perform in so many disciplines. There are people who take part in the 100-meter race as well as take part in the 200-meter race. This is one-to-many relation. If there is at least one value of x for which there exists more than one corresponding value of y. In a nutshell, what we are saying is that if we have, say, our input, we have elements in them 3 and 5, and an output set 9, 8, and 15, and this relation is such that 3 maps to 15 and 5 maps to 9 and at the same time maps to 8. We say that this is a one-to-many relation. This is the domain and the set here is called the range. A second example would be if we have an input set of 3 and 4 and an output set output, and here we have input. Remember, we said that the input set is the domain and the output is the range. We denoted this by y and denoted this by x. Now, if there are elements 9, 18, 27, 8, and 16, there is a relation mapping the input to the output. This is a one-to-many relation. On a graph, we can plot a relation on the Cartesian plane. On a graph, if we have this set of information, this is just a sketch to give you a visual view of what we mean by a one-to-many relation, this type of graph, where one x value which corresponds to more than, so we have y1 and y2. One x value which corresponds to more than one value on the y-axis. The graph is a one-to-many. The next relation we'll talk about is the many to one. Many x to one y in the output set. 5 and 12. In the input set, we have 12, 15, 24, and 36. If we map 12 to 12, to map 36 to that and 24 to this. This is the domain and we have the range. This relation is called a many to one relation. In everyday life, every democratic country goes to the polls to elect presidents, mostly at the end of every 4 years. There is only one position, but so many people can't contest that position. So this is many to one position. On the graph of x and y, anytime we see a graph of this form, where if we draw a line, the x value x1, x2, and x3 all correspond to the same value of y. So there are 3 values of x which correspond to only one value of y. We say that this is a many to one relation. The last thing I would like to talk about is the many to many relation. A relation is said to be many to many if there is at least 2 different values of x that will correspond to at least 2 different values of y. Then we say that relation is many to many. Visually, we can see a many to many relation in this form. If we have an input set and an output set, and it's such that the elements in this set maps to the elements 6 maps to 3 and 6 maps to 5, as well as 7 maps to 2, 7 maps to 3, and 7 maps to 5. Then we say that this mapping or this relation is a many to many relation. On a graph, we can draw a graph, and if the graph is such that it is of this form, where you have x1 corresponding to y1 and at the same time y2, and then x2 having values or mapping to y1 and y2, such that x1, x2, no, let me erase that, x2, and this maps to y1, y2, and you have x1 mapping to y1, x1 mapping to y2, x2 mapping to y1, and x2 mapping to y2. This graph is a to many relation. These relations are very important, especially in computing when we are assigning variables. Later on, when I talk about functions, I'll also talk about these one-to-one function, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many functions. See you in our next lesson.